I never thought I'd spend Thanksgiving alone, especially not after helping my family with $8,000 from my savings. But sometimes the people closest to you can hurt you the most. My name is Melissa Winters, and at 32 years old, I've built a stable career as a financial advisor, helping others make smart decisions with their money. The irony isn't lost on me. For as long as I can remember, I've been the responsible one in our family, the person everyone relied on when things got tough. My younger brother Tyler never seemed to bear the same burden. Growing up, we were close, especially my dad and I. He taught me to fish, helped with my math homework, and cheered the loudest at my high school graduation. Now, as I sit alone in my apartment, staring at the vacation cancellation confirmation on my phone screen, I wonder how we got here. This is how I went from my family's financial safety net to being banned from Thanksgiving dinner, and why I ultimately canceled the Italian vacation they'd been planning for a year. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs, but love has a way of blinding you to the truth, especially when it comes to family. Growing up as the eldest daughter of Robert and Linda Winters meant I learned responsibility early. While my parents weren't strict, there was always an unspoken expectation that I would set an example for Tyler, who was 3 years younger. From elementary school, I was the straight A student, the one who organized her own school supplies and set an alarm without being reminded. "That's our Melissa," Dad would say proudly, always on top of things. But with those compliments came pressure that Tyler never seemed to feel. When I was working part-time at a local cafe during high school to save for college, Tyler was playing video games and attending parties. Even then, I noticed the different standards. "Boys will be boys," Mom would say when Tyler missed curfew, while I received a stern lecture if I was 10 minutes late. College amplified these differences. I worked 2 jobs to supplement my partial scholarship, graduating with minimal debt and a job lined up. Tyler, meanwhile, dropped out after 3 semesters, having spent most of his time partying. Dad paid for those semesters in full, no questions asked. That was the first time I felt the sting of unfairness, but I brushed it aside, telling myself family dynamics were always complicated. Dad controlled the family finances with an iron grip, tracking every expense in detailed spreadsheets and questioning any purchase he deemed unnecessary. Mom typically deferred to him, a pattern that continued throughout my life. When I achieved milestones, Dean's List, first apartment, promotion to senior financial advisor, there were congratulatory calls, but they felt perfunctory. The real family energy seemed reserved for fixing Tyler's frequent crises. His failed startup selling custom sneakers, the maxed-out credit cards, the temporary move back home that lasted 3 years. Despite building my independent life in the city, 30 miles from my parents' suburban home, family calls became predictable. They needed something. Last year, I lent Tyler $3,000 for car repairs, which he promised to repay in 3 months. When I gently brought it up 6 months later, Mom told me I shouldn't nickel and dime family. Dad added that as the successful one, I should want to help without expecting anything back. I swallowed my frustration, just as I always did, and tried to focus on the positives. But that $3,000 was just the latest in a pattern that had been established years earlier. My financial stability becoming the family's safety net, with little acknowledgement of my own needs or boundaries. The call came at 11:42 p.m. on a Tuesday in early October. I was just about to turn in for the night when Mom's name flashed on my phone screen. Immediately, I felt that familiar knot in my stomach. Late-night calls from family usually meant trouble. "Melissa, honey, it's Dad." Mom's voice trembled as she spoke. "He collapsed after dinner and we're at Memorial Hospital. The doctors say he needs surgery right away." My heart dropped as she explained that Dad had severe blockage in 2 arteries and needed a specialized procedure. The problem? Their insurance wouldn't cover the particular approach the cardiologist recommended. "The standard procedure is covered," Mom explained, But Dr. Kaufman says this minimally invasive technique would give your father the best outcome with the shortest recovery time. The next morning, I drove to my parents' house where we gathered in the living room, Mom, Tyler, and me, to discuss options. Dad had been kept overnight for observation but was temporarily stable with medication. They're estimating $8,000 for the procedure after what insurance will cover, Mom explained, looking exhausted. We just don't have that kind of money right now, especially after replacing the roof last month. I looked at Tyler, wondering if he would offer to help, but he quickly shook his head. I got laid off 3 weeks ago and I'm barely making rent, he said, not meeting my eyes. Otherwise, I would totally chip in. I hesitated, thinking about my own finances. That $8,000 would wipe out most of my emergency fund, which I'd been carefully building for years. I had been planning to use some of that money for a down payment on a condo within the next year. Have you looked into payment plans with the hospital? I asked, trying to explore all options. Dad had always taught me to be thorough with financial decisions. We checked, Mom said, her voice dropping. But with your father's credit after the business downturn last year, they're requiring the amount up front. Then came the subtle guilt trip I should have recognized. We've never asked you for anything like this before, Melissa, Mom said softly. Your father would never ask. You know how proud he is. But this is his health we're talking about. I felt the weight of the decision pressing down on me. On one hand, this was my dad's health. How could I prioritize my savings over that? On the other hand, I couldn't help remembering the $3,000 that vanished into the family void and the pattern it represented. The decision point came when Dad called from his hospital bed. His voice, usually so strong and confident, sounded frail and frightened. I'm not ready to go yet, Mel Bell, he said, using my childhood nickname for the first time in years. There's so much more I want to see, so many more holidays to spend with you kids. Something broke inside me then. Whatever complicated feelings I had about our family dynamics, I couldn't bear the thought of losing my father. I'll transfer the money. Today, I told them when I ended the call. Mom cried with relief, and even Tyler looked genuinely grateful. You're an angel, Melly, Mom said, hugging me tightly. Your father and I are so blessed to have you. As I drove to the bank to arrange the transfer, I felt a warmth spreading through me. Maybe this crisis would bring us closer, remind us what family truly meant. I imagined future holidays filled with renewed appreciation, my father healthy and grateful, our bonds strengthened by this moment when I stepped up when it mattered most. Dad's surgery went smoothly, and the doctors said the minimally invasive procedure worked exactly as they'd hoped. I visited him in the hospital daily during his short recovery, bringing his favorite books and keeping him company while Mom took breaks to shower and change clothes. Those days in the hospital felt like a return to the close relationship we'd had when I was younger. Dad seemed genuinely appreciative, squeezing my hand and telling me how much my support meant to him. But once he returned home, something shifted. The first week, Mom and Dad both sent daily updates and thank you texts. By week 2, my check-in calls were increasingly met with brief responses. Everything's fine, or can't talk now, catching a show. When I suggested coming over for Sunday dinner, Mom said they were still settling back into a routine and would invite me once things calmed down. I tried not to read too much into it, telling myself recovery was different for everyone. Then came the Instagram post that made my stomach drop. Tyler had posted a photo of himself leaning against a brand new Honda Civic with the caption, "Upgrade time, thanks to the best parents ever. New whip, blessed." The timestamp showed it was posted just 3 weeks after Dad's surgery, and comments from my parents confirmed they had helped him buy it. I stared at my phone in disbelief. They couldn't afford Dad's medical procedure but could help Tyler buy a new car just weeks later? I called Mom immediately, trying to keep my voice casual when she answered. So Tyler got a new car? That's exciting? There was a pause before she responded with a nervous laugh. Oh, you saw that? Your father and I just helped with the down payment. He needed reliable transportation for his new job interviews. I wanted to ask how they could afford this so soon after claiming financial hardship, but something in her tone told me not to push it. A few days later, I overheard something disturbing while on the phone with Mom. She had apparently forgotten I was on the line and was speaking to Dad in the background. Robert, do you want to take your regular golf lesson on Thursday? Or are you still feeling tired? Golf lessons? Regular ones? And Dad's response chilled me further. I'm feeling great since the procedure. Tell Frank I'll see him at the usual time. There was no hint of someone who had recently undergone major heart surgery. A week later, Mom finally invited me to dinner. I arrived with a bottle of Dad's favorite wine, hoping we could clear the air. Tyler was there too, conspicuously dangling his new car keys and talking about the sound system he'd just had installed. When I carefully brought up the $8,000 I'd provided, asking if they'd set up a plan to repay me once Dad was fully recovered, an uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Dad cleared his throat and said, "Well, medical expenses are complicated. After insurance adjustments and negotiations, it turned out to be a blessing that we had your contribution." He didn't elaborate further or address repayment. Instead, he changed the subject to upcoming holiday plans. Later, when I helped Mom with dessert, I tried again. About the money for Dad's procedure. Mom quickly cut me off. Some things are more important than money, Melissa. We gave you life and raised you. Family helps family. That stung. Before I could respond, Tyler walked in. Are you talking about money again? He asked with an eye roll. You've always been so hung up on money. It's kind of a downer, sis. The evening ended with tension simmering beneath polite conversation. As weeks passed, the subject of the $8,000 became increasingly taboo. Then came the breaking point, a Sunday dinner where Tyler announced he was considering trading his brand new car for a more expensive model. When I couldn't hide my incredulous expression, Dad noticed. Something wrong, Melissa? He asked coolly. I couldn't hold back anymore. I'm just confused how there's money for car upgrades when just 2 months ago you needed $8,000 for a life-saving procedure. Dad's face hardened. There you go again, holding your generosity over our heads. If you helped with my medical bills, just to lord it over us later, maybe you should have kept your money. Mom jumped in with, let's not talk about unpleasant things, while Tyler smirked. I left early that night, fighting back tears, and wondering if I'd imagined the closeness I thought we'd regained during Dad's hospital stay. With the tension from our last dinner still fresh, I threw myself into Thanksgiving preparations, hoping the holiday would reset our family dynamic. Thanksgiving had always been held at my parents' house, but this year I had volunteered to host. It'll be my treat, I told Mom, to celebrate Dad's recovery. She had hesitantly agreed, and I was determined to make it perfect. I spent weeks planning the menu, accounting for everyone's preferences, Dad's love of pecan pie, Mom's gluten sensitivity, and even Tyler's newfound aversion to green beans. I bought a beautiful tablecloth and cloth napkins, invested in a high-quality roasting pan, and even found turkey-shaped salt and pepper shakers that reminded me of ones from my childhood. The weekend before Thanksgiving, I deep-cleaned my apartment, rearranged furniture to accommodate the fold-out table I'd borrowed, and did a test run of my grandmother's stuffing recipe. On Monday, I bought most of the non-perishable ingredients, spending over $200 on groceries. This is going to be the best Thanksgiving ever, I told my coworker Julie, showing her my detailed cooking timeline. It feels important, you know? After Dad's health scare, I want to make it special. When Tuesday evening rolled around, I called Mom to confirm who would arrive when on Thursday. The moment she answered, I sensed something was off in her tone. About Thanksgiving, she began hesitantly. There's been a slight change of plans. My stomach nodded as she explained that the family had decided to celebrate at Tyler's new apartment instead. His place is a bit bigger, and it's closer to your aunt and uncle, she said. not quite meeting my eyes through the video call. We thought it would be easier for everyone. Disappointed but trying to be flexible, I nodded. Okay, I understand. What time should I be there? I can still bring the sides I planned. There was an awkward pause before Mom said, Well, that's the thing, honey. Tyler doesn't have much counter space, so we've already planned the menu. And it's going to be a small gathering this year, just immediate family. My confusion must have shown on my face because she quickly added, And Tyler's new girlfriend, of course. Her name is Amber. They've been dating for 3 weeks, and he's really excited for us all to meet her. I still wasn't understanding. Mom, I'm immediate family. What are you saying? The call waiting beep sounded on my phone. It was Dad. Your father wants to talk to you, Mom said, looking relieved to hand off the conversation. Love you, honey. Before I could respond, Dad's face appeared on screen, his expression stern in a way I recognized from childhood scoldings. Melissa, I'm going to be straight with you, he said without preamble. We don't think it's a good idea for you to join us for Thanksgiving this year. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? Why? I managed to ask, my voice barely audible. Dad's response was cutting. We don't need your negativity about money ruining our holiday. Every time we see you lately, you bring up that loan or make snide comments about our spending. Thanksgiving should be about gratitude, not having somebody watching every bite we take, calculating its cost. Tears welled in my eyes as he continued. You've become so materialistic since you moved to the city. Everything's about money with you now. It's honestly exhausting. I tried to defend myself, to explain that I'd only brought up the money once, but Dad talked over me. We've made our decision. Next year will be different if you can adjust your attitude. Mom came back on briefly at the end, her expression apologetic, but her words anything but. It's better this way, honey. Have a good Thanksgiving. Maybe some friends from work can include you in their plans. The call ended, and I sat frozen in shock, my phone still in my hand. Within seconds, tears were streaming down my face, and a pain unlike anything I'd felt before consumed me. All my careful preparations, the ingredients already purchased, the plans meticulously made, all discarded so easily. And for what? Because I dared to mention the money they'd asked for? I called Julie, barely able to speak through my sobs as I explained what had happened. Come to our Thanksgiving, she immediately offered. My roommates and I always have a big Friendsgiving. One more is no problem. 2 other friends extended similar invitations when they heard what happened, but I couldn't accept. The wound was too raw, the betrayal too complete. How could I sit at someone else's table, making small talk and pretending to be thankful, when my own family had discarded me? I spent the next day in a daze, mechanically going through the motions at work, then coming home to stare at the Thanksgiving preparations that now seemed to mock me. The turkey-shaped salt and pepper shakers, once charming, now felt like symbols of my naivety. I placed them in a drawer, unable to look at them without crying. The week after Thanksgiving passed in a blur of work and forced smiles. My colleagues assumed my subdued mood was just holiday stress, and I didn't correct them. I threw myself into year-end client reviews, staying late at the office and volunteering for additional projects. Anything to keep my mind occupied and away from thoughts of my family gathered around Tyler's table while I ate a microwave dinner alone. On the Tuesday following the holiday, I was discussing tax planning with a client when she mentioned travel insurance for an upcoming family cruise. We always get the comprehensive package now, she explained. Last year, my sister-in-law had to cancel their European vacation last minute due to a work emergency, and they lost thousands. Her words triggered a memory. My parents' long-planned trip to Italy. For years, they had talked about celebrating their 35th wedding anniversary with a dream vacation to Italy. The milestone had passed 2 years ago, but financial concerns had delayed the trip. I remembered helping them research destinations last Christmas, creating a shared document with recommended cities, hotels, and attractions. Dad had mentioned wanting to see Venice before it sinks, and Mom had her heart set on the Amalfi Coast. The timeline suddenly clicked in my mind. If they had finally booked the trip, it would have happened right around when... No, they wouldn't have. Would they? That evening, I found myself scrolling through my mother's Facebook page, something I'd avoided since the Thanksgiving incident. And there it was, posted October 18th, just 1 week after I had transferred the $8,000. So excited. After years of dreaming, we've finally booked our Italian adventure. 14 days exploring Venice, Florence, Rome, and the Amalfi Coast next. Spring. Dream come true, wise to bucket list, ask Italy bound. The post had dozens of congratulatory comments, including several referencing Dad's recent health scare. So glad Robert is well enough to travel, and nothing like a medical scare to remind us to seize the day. My hands trembled as I continued, scrolling, finding more posts with screenshots of hotel bookings and excited comments about preparing for the trip. Then I saw it. A comment from Mom on Tyler's profile. Can't wait to have you join us for the Rome portion of the trip. First, family vacation in years. Attached was a confirmation email showing Tyler's flight to Rome, scheduled to coincide with the middle of their 2-week itinerary. The final piece fell into place when I noticed the travel agency they'd booked through, Meridian Travel, the same agency where my college roommate worked. I had recommended them to my parents because my friend had promised to give them special attention. With growing certainty that my $8,000 had funded this trip, not Dad's procedure, I called my parents' house. The call went straight to voicemail. I left a message asking them to call me back about an important financial matter. No response. I texted Mom, need to talk about the $8,000 I gave you for Dad's procedure. Please call. Hours passed without a reply. Finally, around midnight, a text came from Dad's phone. Not sure why you're bringing this up again. If you must know, insurance ended up covering most of the procedure after appeal. Your contribution helped with out-of-pocket costs and recovery expenses. We're grateful but tired of the constant focus on money. We'll talk after the holidays. I stared at the message, the confirmation of my suspicions forcing the air from my lungs. There had been no appeal. They had lied about needing the money for the procedure in the first place. The timing of the trip booking, just days after receiving my money, was too perfect to be coincidence. I sent one more text. Did you use my $8,000 to book your Italy trip? The response came almost immediately. That trip has been planned for years. The timing was coincidental. Not everything is about you, Melissa. But I knew better. My parents had manipulated me, using my concern for my father's health to fund their vacation, a vacation they hadn't even invited me to join. As I sat in my dark apartment, another critical detail surfaced in my memory. Because my parents weren't comfortable with online bookings, I had offered to let them use my credit card for the reservations to earn the travel points, with the understanding they would reimburse me before the charges posted. We'll write you a check right away, Dad had promised. That check never came, and in the worry over his health, I had completely forgotten about this arrangement. The realization hit me like a thunderbolt. The Italy trip reservations were under my name, paid, with my credit card and booked through my friend's agency, which meant I had the power to cancel everything. For 3 days, I carried the knowledge about the Italian vacation like a physical weight on my chest. I barely slept, playing out different scenarios in my mind. My friend Keisha urged caution when I confided in her. Just let it go, Mel, she advised over coffee. Yes, they lied to you and that's terrible, but canceling their trip won't heal the relationship. It will destroy it completely. I knew she had a point. Canceling the trip would be a nuclear option, a definitive statement that would forever alter my relationship with my family. But as I reflected on our history, I began to see a clear pattern that had been present my entire adult life. The $3,000 for Tyler's car repairs that was never repaid. The $1 in $200 I spent flying home when Mom claimed Dad was seriously ill, only to find him mildly under the weather. The countless smaller expenses I'd covered over the years, always with the promise of reimbursement that never materialized. What had once seemed like isolated incidents now revealed themselves as a calculated pattern of financial exploitation. I checked my text messages again. Still no meaningful response from my parents about the money. On social media, though, they were plenty active. Mom had posted photos of their Thanksgiving feast, with a caption that twisted the knife. So, grateful for family who truly understand the meaning of the holiday. Tyler had been even more direct, sharing a photo of himself raising a glass with the caption, "Life's too short to spend holidays with uptight people who can't enjoy themselves. Blessed with the right family." That post received a like from my father's account. As the days passed, my hurt crystallized into something harder and more resolute. I wasn't just upset about the money. I was devastated by the deliberate deception, the manipulation of my deepest fears about losing my father, and the casual cruelty of excluding me from Thanksgiving after I had drained my savings to help them. On Friday morning, exactly 1 week after Thanksgiving, I made my decision. I called Meridian Travel and asked to speak to my friend Jessica. "Hey Jess, it's Melissa Winters," I said when she came on the line. "I need to ask about the Italy booking for my parents that was made using my credit card." Jessica was immediately helpful. "Of course. That's coming up in April, right? Your parents were so excited. What do you need to know?" I took a deep breath. What are the cancellation options at this point? If everything were canceled now, what would the penalties be? Jessica seemed surprised but professional. "Well, you're still far enough out that most of it is refundable. The airfare would have a change fee of about $200 per person, but the hotel deposits would come back at 100%. The excursions are fully refundable until 30 days before. All told, you'd probably get back about 90% of the total package price." I did some quick mental math. That would mean recovering around $7,200 of my $8,000. And since it was booked with my credit card under my name, I'm the only one who can make changes to the reservation, correct? "That's right," Jessica confirmed. "You're listed as the primary contact and payment source. Your parents are just the travelers." After thanking her, I sat at my kitchen table for nearly an hour, contemplating the gravity of what I was considering. Was I really prepared to cancel a trip my parents had dreamed about for years? Would doing so make me as manipulative as they had been? But then Tyler posted another photo, this one of shopping bags from expensive stores. "Early Christmas shopping done. This year's gonna be epic. Italy bound, our family first." That was the breaking point. The final confirmation that while I sat alone on Thanksgiving, uninvited from my own family's table, they were not only planning their Italian vacation with my money, but also flaunting it publicly. With hands that no longer trembled, I called Jessica back. "I need to cancel the entire Italy package," I said firmly. "All flights, hotels, excursions, everything." Jessica hesitated. "Are you sure, Melissa? Your parents seemed so looking forward to this trip." "I'm sure," I replied. "Please process the cancellation and refund the amount to my credit card." 20 minutes later, it was done. The dream Italian vacation had been canceled, with $7,243.16 set to be refunded to my card within 3 to 5 business days. I composed a brief text message to my family group chat. "The Italian vacation has been canceled. Your $8,000 has been refunded to my account." Then I turned off my phone, made myself a cup of tea, and waited for the storm to break. When I turned my phone back on 3 hours later, it nearly exploded with notifications. 17 missed calls from Dad, 12 from Mom, 23 from Tyler. The voicemails ranged from shocked disbelief to rage. "What have you done?" my father bellowed in his first message, his voice so loud it distorted the audio. "Call me immediately!" Mom's messages started with tearful pleas. "Melissa, please tell me this is some kind of mistake," before devolving into guilt trips. "After everything we've done for you, how could you hurt us this way? Tyler's contributions were laced with profanity and threats. The text messages were even worse. Dad, you had no right to cancel our trip. That money was a gift. We'll be consulting a lawyer about this theft. Mom, I'm crying so hard I can barely see to type this. 35 years of marriage and our one dream trip is destroyed by our own daughter. I don't know if I can ever forgive this. Tyler sent a series of increasingly hostile messages, culminating in, "You're dead to this family. Don't ever try to contact us again." I hadn't expected to feel calm in the face of their fury, but surprisingly, I did. Their reactions only confirmed what I had finally allowed myself to see. My family viewed me primarily as a resource to be used, not a person to be loved. The next day, the broader fallout began. Aunt Susan, Dad's sister, called to tell me I was no longer welcome at her house. Uncle Dave posted a vague Facebook status about selfish millennials who don't respect family, clearly aimed at me. Cousins I'd been close with suddenly unfriended me on social media. But not everyone joined the pile-on. My grandmother left. A brief voicemail. "I don't know exactly what happened, Melissa, but I know you wouldn't do something like this without serious cause. Call me when you're ready." And my mother's younger sister texted, "Your mom's telling a story that doesn't quite add up. I'd like to hear your side when you feel up to it." I was still processing these mixed reactions when my building's security desk called on Sunday afternoon. "Ms. Winters, your parents are in the lobby insisting on coming up. Should I send them to your floor?" My heart raced. Absolutely not. I don't want to see them. But it was too late. They had pushed past the desk attendant and were already in the elevator. I considered locking myself in my bedroom but decided I wouldn't hide in my own home. When the knock came, it was more like pounding. I opened the door to find both parents, red-faced and bristling with anger. "How dare you?" Dad started immediately, pushing his way into my apartment. "You stole from us." Mom followed, tears streaming down her face. "We raised you better than this, Melissa. I don't even recognize who you've become." The confrontation quickly escalated as I refused to back down. "You lied to me," I said firmly. "You said you needed money for Dad's medical procedure, but you used it to book a vacation. You manipulated my love and concern for you." Dad's face contorted. "The money was a gift. Once you gave it to us, it was ours to use however we wanted." "A gift?" I repeated incredulously. "You specifically asked for help with Dad's procedure. You showed me medical documents. Mom cried about not being able to afford the treatment you needed." Dad waved dismissively. "So we changed our minds about how to allocate funds. That's our right." The argument spilled into the hallway as neighbors began to peek out of their doors. "You've always been difficult," Dad shouted, his finger jabbing the air near my face. "Always thinking you're better than the rest of us because you have a fancy job and a city apartment." That's when years of suppressed frustration finally boiled over. "I thought I was your daughter, not your personal bank." I shouted back, "Every time you've needed money, I've helped. And every time you've found reasons not to pay me back. You even uninvited me from Thanksgiving after I gave you that money." Mom broke down completely then. "We never meant to repay the money," she admitted between sobs. "We thought you understood that. You make so much more than we do. What's $8,000 to someone like you?" Her honesty, however devastating, was almost refreshing. "It was my emergency fund," I explained. My voice dropping. "Money I saved for years, working extra shifts and cutting corners. It represented security to me. And you took it under false pretenses." By this time, my neighbor Mr. Patel had called building security, who arrived to find us in a heated standoff. "Everything okay here?" the guard asked, eyeing my parents with suspicion. "These people need to leave," I said firmly. "They're not welcome in my home." Despite their protests, my parents were escorted to the lobby. As the elevator doors closed on their shocked faces, I felt a strange mixture of devastation and liberation. The week that followed brought new dimensions to the conflict. Tyler launched what could only be described as a social media campaign against me, posting childhood photos with captions like, "Before my sister became a heartless money grabber," and encouraging mutual acquaintances to take sides. Some extended family members I hadn't spoken to in years felt entitled to weigh in, leaving judgmental comments on my profiles and sending unsolicited messages about respecting my elders. I deleted all my social media apps and focused on getting through each day. Work became my sanctuary, the one place where my competence was valued and my boundaries respected. Nights were harder. I'd find myself staring at old family photos, wondering if there had ever been genuine love underneath all the manipulation, or if I had simply been blinded by my desperate need to belong. The doubts would creep in during these quiet moments. Had I overreacted? Was canceling the trip too extreme? Should I have just accepted the loss and moved on? But then I'd remember the deliberate deception about Dad's health, using my deepest fear to extract money from me, and the casual cruelty of the Thanksgiving exclusion. And I knew I had simply drawn a boundary that was decades overdue. The week before Christmas marked a full month since the vacation cancellation, and the emotional whiplash had left me exhausted. I'd lost 7 pounds, had trouble sleeping, and caught myself zoning out during client meetings. The few friends who knew the full story were supportive but concerned. "You're in the right," Julie insisted over lunch, "but this is eating you alive." She wasn't wrong. Despite standing my ground, I was plagued by doubt and a lifetime of conditioning that prioritized family harmony over my own well-being. Tuesday evening, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I nearly declined it, assuming it was another angry relative, but something made me answer. "Melissa, it's Aunt Rebecca, your father's sister." I hadn't spoken to Aunt Rebecca in years. She had moved to Arizona when I was in college and had gradually lost touch with most of the family. "I know this call is unexpected," she continued when I didn't immediately respond, "but I heard about what happened from your grandmother and, well, I thought you should know you're not the first person your parents have done this to." For the next hour, Aunt Rebecca shared stories that mirrored my own experience with alarming precision. 10 years earlier, she had loaned my parents $12,000 for what they claimed was a critical foundation repair on their house. She later discovered they had used the money for an elaborate kitchen renovation instead. When I confronted them, they said the same thing they probably told you, that once the money was given, it was theirs to use as they saw fit. Rebecca had cut ties with them afterward, which explained her absence from family gatherings. "The family closed ranks around them, just like they're doing to you now," she explained. "Your father has always been the favorite, the one who could do no wrong. I was painted as the villain for years." Hearing Rebecca's story was like having a missing puzzle piece finally click into place. I wasn't crazy, and I wasn't alone. In the days that followed, unexpected support emerged from other quarters. A cousin messaged to say she believed me but was afraid to say so publicly. My grandmother invited me for tea and listened without judgment to my full account, then shared her own observations of the family dynamics. "Your father has a gifted way of reshaping reality to suit his needs," she noted with surprising candor. "I've watched it his whole life." Most surprisingly, I received an email from Amber, Tyler's new girlfriend. "Tyler doesn't know I'm contacting you," she wrote, "but some of the things he said about family finances don't add up. The way he expects his parents to bail him out, and now he's talking about you the same way. It's concerning. I think there might be a pattern here I should be aware of." The following week, I started therapy, something I should have done years ago. Dr. Chen helped me recognize the patterns of emotional manipulation I'd been subjected to throughout my life. "What you're describing has elements of financial abuse," she explained during our second session. "Using your love and concern to extract resources, then punishing you for setting boundaries." We worked on understanding why I had remained caught in this dynamic for so long, my desire for approval, my hope that generosity would translate to love, my fear of being alone. The work was painful but clarifying, like lancing an infected wound. By mid-January, I felt strong enough to establish clear terms for any future relationship with my family. I wrote a detailed email explaining exactly what had happened from my perspective, why I had canceled the trip, and what would need to change for us to rebuild trust. I will no longer provide financial support of any kind, I stated firmly. Any future relationship must be based on mutual respect and honesty. I deserve to be treated as a full member of this family, not just a resource to be used and discarded. I didn't expect a positive response, and I didn't receive one. Dad replied with a single line, "When you're ready to apologize, we'll talk." Mom sent a longer, tearful email that acknowledged some hurt feelings but still framed me as the primary wrongdoer. Tyler didn't respond at all. But for the first time, their reactions didn't devastate me. I understood now that their behavior reflected their limitations, not my worth. With the $7,243.16 refunded to my credit card, I made a decision that felt both practical and symbolic. I booked a solo trip to Portugal for the spring, a country I'd always wanted to visit but had put off in favor of family obligations. The act of planning a journey for my own enjoyment, without consideration for anyone else's preferences or needs, felt revolutionary. As winter turned to spring, I focused on building what my therapist called my chosen family, deepening friendships, with people who respected my boundaries and valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. I joined a book club, started volunteering at a financial literacy program for young adults, and reconnected with college friends I'd lost touch with. I also began the hard work of examining my own people-pleasing tendencies and the ways I had enabled my family's behavior. Had I been too eager to help, too willing to believe their emergencies were genuine? Probably. But I was learning that understanding my role didn't mean taking blame for their manipulation. One unexpected development came in early March. Amber, now my occasional text correspondent, revealed that Tyler had borrowed $2,000 from her for car repairs, then gotten angry when she asked about repayment. "I keep thinking about what you said about patterns," she wrote. "I think I need to really evaluate this relationship. It saddened me to see the cycle potentially repeating with someone new, but I was grateful that my experience might help Amber protect herself." "Setting boundaries isn't selfish," I told her, echoing Dr. Chen's words to me. "It's necessary for any healthy relationship." As I prepared for my upcoming Portugal trip, I reflected on how much had changed in just a few months. The pain hadn't disappeared. I still had moments of grief for the family relationship I had wanted, but never truly had. But alongside that, grief was a growing sense of liberation. I was no longer measuring my worth by my family's approval, or sacrificing my financial security for people who saw it as their due. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I was putting myself first. And instead of the guilt I had expected to feel, I experienced something entirely different: peace. 6 months after the vacation cancellation, I hosted my first Thanksgiving dinner. My small apartment was filled with the people who had supported me through the darkest period of my life: Julie and her husband, 2 colleagues who had become close friends, my therapist, Dr. Chen, who had insisted on bringing her famous cranberry relish, and most surprisingly, Aunt Rebecca, who had flown in from Arizona. "I wouldn't miss it," she'd said when I'd tentatively extended the invitation. "It's time to create new holiday traditions." As we gathered around my table, the same one I had planned to use for my family the year before, I felt a profound sense of gratitude that had nothing to do with obligation or blood ties. These people chose to be here, chose to be part of my life, with no expectation of anything beyond mutual care and respect. The months since my confrontation with my parents had brought gradual changes. Mom had started sending cautious text messages. In April, nothing substantial, just weather updates or generic thinking of you messages. I responded politely but maintained firm boundaries. There had been a brief thaw when I sent a birthday card to Dad in June. He hadn't responded directly, but Mom mentioned he had displayed it on their mantle, a small sign that perhaps, someday, a new type of relationship might be possible. Tyler remained distant, though Amber had reported that my brother had reluctantly entered financial counseling after she had made it a condition of continuing their relationship. Your standing up to your family made me realize I could stand up too, she told me during one of our coffee dates. The relationship dynamics were shifting in ways I couldn't have predicted. My Portugal trip in May had been transformative. 10 days of exploring at my own pace, making decisions based solely on my interests, and rediscovering parts of myself that had been submerged under family expectations. I had extended the trip by 3 days on impulse, something I would never have done before, always too conscious of others' schedules and needs. You seem different, Julie had observed when I returned, sunburned and smiling. More yourself. She was right. The Melissa who had once drained her savings to avoid disappointing her family was evolving into someone who understood that true generosity couldn't exist without boundaries. I had learned to validate myself without external approval, and to recognize when assistance was appropriate versus when it enabled harmful patterns. The financial aspect of my healing journey had been equally important. With my emergency fund, slowly rebuilding, I established a strict policy for myself. My savings would go toward my future, not toward rescuing others from preventable crises. I created a modest giving fund, separate from my essential savings, money I could share without expectation of return, but only with people who had demonstrated respect for my boundaries. My professional life flourished as I applied these healthier patterns to all my relationships. I set clearer limits with demanding clients, negotiated a raise that acknowledged my true value to the firm, and even began mentoring younger colleagues on both financial planning and personal boundaries. The skills are related, I explained during a workshop I developed. Both require knowing your worth and communicating it clearly. As we finished our Thanksgiving meal and moved to the living room for coffee and pie, Aunt Rebecca pulled me aside. "I'm proud of you," she said simply. "Breaking patterns isn't easy, especially ones that have existed for generations. What you did took courage." Her words brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "I still miss them sometimes," I admitted. "The family I thought we were, or could have been." Rebecca nodded. "That grief doesn't go away entirely, but it makes room for something better, something real." Looking around at the laughing, relaxed faces of my chosen family, I knew she was right. The path forward wasn't about completely cutting ties or holding grudges. It was about establishing authentic connections based on mutual respect rather than obligation or exploitation. Would my parents and I ever fully reconcile? I didn't know. That would depend on their willingness to acknowledge the patterns of the past and commit to different behaviors in the future. But for the first time, I understood that I could be whole either way. My life's value wasn't determined by their validation. As the evening wound down and guests began to depart with leftovers carefully packed in containers I had prepared, I felt a sense of completion. The journey from last Thanksgiving to this one had been painful but necessary, a passage from being defined by others' expectations to defining myself on my own terms. I had lost the family I was born into when I stood up for myself, but found the strength I never knew I had. And in the end, that's worth more than any amount of money. What about you? Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between maintaining peace and standing up for yourself? How do you determine when a relationship is worth fighting for versus when it's time to set firm boundaries? I'd genuinely like to know your thoughts. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If it resonated with you or might help someone else understand they're not alone in navigating complicated family dynamics, please consider sharing it. Wishing you the strength to honor your own worth, whether that means helping those you love or protecting yourself from harm. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply say, "Enough."